you, everybody, and good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to ask you all for 2 points of interaction this morning, and I'm going to ask you to yell some stuff out. So this is going to be the first. I'm fortunate to have a really great girlfriend who always supports me, but she's unable to be here this morning, so you're all going to say hello to her on my behalf. So we're going to send this. This is why we get to live in the future now. We get to send things through the net and say hello to the people we love. So on the count of 3, you're all going to yell, "Hello, beautiful." How's that? You're going to go home and roll your eyes. That's super cheesy, whatever, but I'm teaching you things, so you're going to help me out now. 1, 2, 3.
Hello, beautiful!
You guys are awesome. Cool. So that's me. I'm Ramsay. I'm a mad scientist, creative technologist, and one of the bears that they trained to ride little bikes at the circus who escaped his cage. I'm from Irvine, California originally. I trained at USC in both undergraduate degrees in neuroscience and my master's in neuroinformatics. Go Jed! Where I was so fortunate to meet my co-founder, Dr. Combs, sitting over there, who I've been working on Dopamine with for a few years now, and a few beers now. With him, we make APIs, IPAs, and messes. If you need to get at me, I'm at ramsay@usedopamine.com. I like beer, I like making friends, I like selling software, I like helping people, so email me. And you can follow my moderately entertaining life at Ramsay Brown on Instagram. I still don't know how to use Twitter. Like, I don't understand what Twitter's for. And I'm slightly qualified, I guess, to talk to you today about the intersection of brains, minds, and machines, because that's what I've spent the past few years working on. I grew up watching too much sci-fi, and one of the byproducts of watching too much sci-fi as a kid is you grow up with an unapologetic enthusiasm that the future is not only going to be dope, it's going to be dope because we're all going to work really hard at building it to be dope, and that's going to be okay. So I started working on this thing that was going to live at the intersection of computers and minds and brains. And through that process, I wrote programming languages to help humans and robots better interact with each other in the scientific workspace. I made a Google Maps for the brain. And now with Dr. Combs, we built the world's first API for hacking brains. So what does it mean to live in a world of persuasive computing is the question we're going to be answering today. And I want to reassure you that even though you live in a world now full of persuasive computing, that's fine. It's better than not living in that world. If you consume apps, you're going to be okay. If you produce apps and you want to start learning how to use persuasive computing, talk to me afterwards. That's a little bit what this talk is going to be about. It is slightly before 6 a.m. in a dimly lit and deafeningly loud server farm just outside Oregon, and a small Python script chirps to life because it's time to wake up Jennifer. And 1,000 miles away in Santa Monica, a young woman's smartphone rings with a ringtone she's not super familiar with, and as her curiosity abates as she puts on her running shoes and goes out for her morning run along the boardwalk, some neural network algorithms in the San Francisco cluster are training on how quickly she's running and whether or not she's going to hit her personal record she's trying for the week. At the end of the run, it's determined that if she's going to form a habit out of this as fast as possible, now's going to be the time to praise her. This feels like just this very innocuous, it felt nice, I got the little high five in the app. But unbeknownst to her, the pattern of her running and the pattern of her behavior is such that even if you took away the app and you took away the 6 a.m. notification, she's going to do this for a very long time now. She's formed a new habit. And she's formed a new habit kind of outside her knowledge that there were forces at play helping her to get there beyond just enabling the behavior. She was actually being persuaded by a machine to get up on time, to get the running shoes on, to get up the door, and to form that habit around running. And we're very used to being in charge of our machines and telling them, hey, I need this thing done. And what we're entering is a world where there's going to be a little bit of pushback. We're entering a world of persuasive computing. Persuasive computing, very narrowly, is computing systems, software, algorithms, frameworks, designed explicitly to change what we do and change what we value. This is the rigorized tweaking of human motivation through technology. And this is what I've been working on with Dr. Combs. We're not the first. Going back to early behaviorism, we've had a really good understanding that without discounting the beautiful parts of the human condition, we still are, for all intents and purposes, evolutionarily you can treat us pretty close to like any other mammal. We're going to respond to reinforcements, we're going to respond to praise, we're going to respond to punishment. This isn't a new idea. What is new about it is the rigor with which some new academics and some new authors, and myself with dopamine, are taking it in terms of rigorizing it and scaling it. So we've known for a while that behavior was programmable. That wasn't a surprise after the 60s. What we have now is the ability to program it en masse. And that's okay because we have a really deep pressing need for this globally right now. 100 years ago, the things that killed people, even in the developed world, were mysterious pathogens for which we had no name. So we mounted these massive public health campaigns through both the innovation of technologies that got deployed around sanitation and good practices there, to building good cultural memes around things like vaccination. We were able to take these things that killed us, that were about our external environment, and more or less almost completely eradicate them. Unfortunately, the things that are killing us today are ennui and cheeseburgers. Really, the things that are killing Americans, the things that are killing people in the developed world, are diseases that have an alarmingly large behavioral component. These are things like heart disease, cancers, COPD, stroke, diabetes, kidney disease, suicide. And there's lots of ways that someone who suffers from these gets here. What is alarming is the frequency for diagnosis that this is all, well, I can't really tell you, but you did it to yourself, kind of problem. The physician's gonna be far too polite to say. What's alarming is you go and you look at the stats on these, and for each of these pages you go and click through these links. It'll say things like, how many people contract it, what the cost is to the developed world, and how to prevent it. For the previous slide, I mentioned typhoid fever. If you had to ask somebody, oh, how do I prevent typhoid fever? I don't know, don't drink the water. Wasn't exactly an option. But where we're at now is that we're dying from mostly semi-optional diseases. So if we're really gonna take a serious whack at these diseases that are killing us en masse now, that have this really large behavioral component, we need to be really brave about our technology of behavior. And in the same way that industrial design gave us both good memes and good tools for building beautiful products that help us live a better life, and architectural design has given us ways to build structures that meet different human needs, we need a new toolkit for thinking about the rigorous design of human behavior. And that toolkit we're calling behavior design. Inside this toolkit is a variety of techniques that designers and developers can use when building products that are designed to shape people. In the same way that you're going to get your hammer out to solve one problem and your screwdriver out to solve another, you're going to get out optimal challenge to solve one type of problem, reinforcement to get someone to start doing a behavior for a very long time. And it's no surprise that this is happening now instead of 10 years ago or 10 years in the future. There's 4 reasons this is happening now. So this is kind of the how did we get here part of the talk. And I promise the rest of this is going to be pretty quick. The first reason we got here is that for the first time, almost every single one of you now, in your pocket, has a high bandwidth supercomputer connected to this global skybrain thing that is both constantly listening to your behavior, it's constantly sensing what you're doing, where you are, how much you're moving, ambient temperature, and it has the ability to push back against you. It buzzes and you attend to it like a needy child. So for the first time ever, we have most of people in the developed world with these sensors on them at all times. They can pick up a myriad dimension of human behavior, send it to the sky real fast, get a decision made, and push it back down in milliseconds to get you to change your behavior. That's never happened before. It's only from really, really fantastically cheap sensors and wireless connectivity that we've gotten here. The second reason is that we're getting better at brains as a whole. The neuroscience community is making leaps and bounds led by new things that are coming to scale in research universities, like cheaper fMRIs, better analytics techniques that are allowing us to more fine-grained pick apart what brains are made of and what they're doing. So that we get to start explaining human behavior in terms of mechanism as opposed to really great post hoc storytelling. The third is that the cloud made computing dirt cheap. So It used to be maybe a decade ago that if I wanted to do a lot of heavy intensive computing, I had to go buy really expensive computers and then leave them idle 90% of the time. But now just as easily as I only pay for the water I use from the water company, I only pay for the computing I use and it costs me pennies on the dollar. And finally, intelligent machines are now basically free and open source. So what I've listed here is a package called sci-fi and all the pieces inside of it. It is the standard go-to kit for building intelligent machines these days. It's a Python package that is so easy to use now, an intrepid undergrad can piece together machine learning in a weekend and build something that might have taken a fleet of PhD students years to build a decade ago. So the tools for building thinking machines are now completely free and completely democratized. The computational substrate to do it on is pennies on the dollar with good free trials and available on demand. We're getting better at understanding where human behavior actually comes from at better than a storytelling level. And now all of human behavior is recorded constantly, and you have the ability to push back against people when they do certain things. So my phone can tell that I've been out climbing trees for 45 minutes, and it's going to send that up to a database somewhere. That database is going to use a model it has of how I respond to reinforcement and my goals around behavior change. And then some machine learning is going to turn on to determine that actually now would be a good time to praise me for going out and getting my exercise and staying fit because it aligns with what I'm trying to do. So this is my shameless plug. This is what Dr. Combs and I have been working on at Dopamine Labs. So we built the world's first API for behavior change. So if you are an app developer and you need your users to stick around longer and do more stuff in your app, use Dopamine to do it. We do this by timing and patterning when you give your users that little bit of positive praise after they've done some sort of target action you want them to do. And then we can get them to do it 60% more, which is a huge number. So this graph actually is the raw data we have from a trial we did with a pedometer helping people walk more after cardiovascular surgery. So the perennial scientists in us said that it'd be great if the technology always worked every time, but we've still got to test it. So we are always running these double-blind control experiments. These people are control subjects that did not receive reinforcement, and these people are subjects that received reinforcement from the dopamine API. And over the course of 90 days, they walked 60% longer and 60% more, which if you think about what that translates to in terms of health benefits, grandpa walking 60% more because he downloaded a Persuasive pedometer means he's going to make that many more of your granddaughter's dance recitals. And this is a really tangible kind of human condition problem where by just modulating when and how you tell someone, hey, good job, it's really straightforward, you can get them to do a relatively challenging behavior like get up and go for a walk for much, much longer. And that was one of the things that B.F. Skinner, one of the pioneers of behaviorism, found was that it didn't quite matter what reward or reinforcement you were giving, it was when and how you gave it that tended to make the difference. So what we've done is we figured out a really plug-and-play way to let apps do that. You sign up, you drop our code into your app, a couple lines, a couple minutes, get it out the door, see this great result. So if anyone wants to use it, you go to usedopamine.com, try it out. For everyone else who is not out there building apps and slightly terrified now that their behavior is being persuaded by machines that appear to know a little more and think a little faster and have a little bit better data than they do, that is a slight cause for alarm, but it's also, I think, a cause for us to be excited. So I recently learned that one of the men responsible for coining the term behaviorism, one of the first great behaviorists, John Watson, was a professor at Harvard in psychology in the 1910s. After he was dismissed from Harvard University, brilliant man, one of the pioneers of the field of understanding how human behavior really works. Gets kicked out of Harvard, goes and lands squarely in New York's largest advertising firm. Which is not the most terrifying thing you've ever heard. One of the brightest psychologists at the time was plopped into one of the world's first great ad firms. This man is solely responsible for both inventing the coffee break and the little impulse purchase thing you have at the cash register. You're like, yeah, it's $1, fuck, I'll get it. I bring him up to show that if you have a good understanding of where human behavior comes from and what human behavior is made of, and you go and you're going to try to rigorously apply it to the real world, you can do some really interesting persuasive things. So that's kind of I want to set him up as a straw man, like how to not do this, because I don't know if the rest of us are better for either coffee breaks she did for Maxwell House as an ad campaign, or those impulse buy purchases, because I certainly don't need more cheap Mentos. I'm not sure that that's exactly the direction we want our future to go in terms of what persuasive computing looks like. And if someone came to you and told you that advertising companies for years have been using data analytics and data mining to pick apart non-intuitive patterns in your consumptive behavior and then try to persuade you with coupons or discounts to buy new stuff, you would have like, yeah, of course, duh. Because you have some sort of intrinsic distrust of the field. And as a consumer, you're very aware that your behavior is actively being shaped to try to buy these things they need you to buy. That wouldn't have surprised you. But to say that now those technologies are democratizing, now any app can plug into them, is a little freakier. So for everyone here who doesn't make apps and instead consumes them, which has to be all of you, by the way, because you made it this far this morning, given that you are now entering a world where these types of tools are not just freely available, they're just a couple lines of code away, more and more of the products you use every day are going to have an active goal in shaping you into the kind of person that product needs you to be. For some of these products, this is going to be very intuitively good for you. A diet app that wants to persuade you to adhere to your diet better is probably normatively good. A very persuasive version of Candy Crush might be good. And a very, very persuasive online gambling game is probably definitely not good. I bring this up because what this means now is these technologies become better at changing human behavior in this very data-driven, fine-grained way. You're going to have to make some interesting decisions about the company you keep. You're going to have to make some very interesting decisions about what apps you're going to let close to your mind. Because these apps are doing a form of mind control. And that should freak you out a tiny bit, because you don't know what code is in there. You don't know to what ends they're trying to shape you, now that this is a very available kind of tool. And they're going to increasingly start doing it. So be very careful about the apps you download, not to say for privacy reasons, but just for the reasons of, if you were to build a habit out of that app, if that app were persuading you right now in ways that you're not totally aware of, would that be the kind of person you would like to become? So, going forward in the future, download and use the types of tools that would enable you to become the person you'd like to become, taking very seriously that these apps are taking very seriously your behavior and how to shift it. But this doesn't exactly need to be a cause for alarm. It's a shame that we remember Huxley mostly for Brave New World, and we forget about his follow-up book, Island. Has anybody read Island? Okay, I've got like 3 hands, but how many people read Brave New World? Wow. Great. So Brave New World is the story of how we use persuasive technology to suppress the human condition, squash humans down into machines. And The Island is the story of how we use those exact same technologies to uplift the human condition. It is a story of utopia. It is a story of persuasive technology to enable human thriving. And I think if we're going to make a serious stab at the fact that we are literally wallifying ourselves, we are getting fatter, we are getting unhappier, we are getting broker, mostly by our own doings as opposed to some sort of external influences, we need to develop some sort of cultural gut checks about what sort of persuasive technology we do want to have in our lives, what sort of apps we do want to be okay with, and what sort of apps we don't. And if you make apps, now I'm directly talking to you, you possess a superpower. Beyond the mind control APIs we discussed today, you already do mind control. You are Charles Xavier's status, an X-Men actually. Because when you design an app, what you're doing is taking this idea in your head, translating it into code, and then when anyone else is using your app, they're granting you 5 minutes of permission to control how they're going to think. When you build software, you're actually building the boundary conditions for the human experience. When I was a kid, if you knew what the word app meant, it meant that your dad or your mom must work in software or something. And now that's a word that toddlers know. Software and apps used to be subculture, and now it's just culture. Now we all live in the net. I'm sorry, you're gonna leave, you got here from a meetup, you're gonna leave here and go behind a desk, where you're mostly gonna stare at a piece of glass all day, living inside the net. And then you're gonna leave that and go home and continue to live inside the net. That's just what we do now. We live in software. So if you make software in the same way that like these walls set the boundary conditions for where I'm allowed to walk right now, you are building the walls and the corridors of the human experience online. And so you get to make a decision about what that experience gets to be like. You get to decide what to build. You're a tool builder. You make stuff. So you have this huge ethical responsibility then to make stuff that enables thriving. If you don't read Gates Notes, go read Gates Notes, just as a thing to read, to pick up on what interesting hard problems are still left, because there's a ton. So pick a hard problem and start building. Pick a piece of software to build that actually helps people thrive. And be really honest with yourself. Don't like, well, it's kind of like thriving. No, actually be honest with yourself. It should be pretty intuitive what counts as thriving. If your children were to grow up in a world in which the piece of technology you're building is as persuasive as all technology is becoming, would that world suck more or less than the one we have right now? And be really honest with yourself about that. This is why I'm doing Dopamine. I can't go coach everybody individually. I can't go fix type 2 diabetes. I can't fix debt and ennui, but I can support the apps that can. And I want you all to go and build stuff that's going to help uplift people, because you have a superpower. If you know how to code, or if you make technology, you do mind control already. I don't need to tell you more about mind control APIs. You already do it. So pick the kind of thoughts you want your users to have. Make them good. Strive to build good behaviors with them, and go build amazing shit. And thanks for giving me a few minutes of your morning.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ramsay. That was amazing and really inspiring. It's great to know that we have tools for developers that are interested in helping encourage your end users to make better decisions that are in alignment with your vision. We're going to open up to Q&A right now. John's going to walk around with the mic. If you're not familiar, this guy's got a question in the back. If you're not familiar with our format, we do Q&A now and comments offline. So if you want to share a story or just engage with Ramsay, please save that for after the Q&A section. You'll stick around for a little bit after this?
Yeah, so okay, this is all good. If I don't get your question, I promise I'm very friendly.
Yeah.
Come find me afterwards. I like making friends.
Yeah, just buy him the beer, he'll tell you everything.
Yeah. So. I'm adequately caffeinated right now, I'm fine.
Okay. Very good. If you have a question, raise your hand.
If you're happy and you know it, raise your hands.
So,
what's your name?
Alan Fleur.
Hi, Alan.
Hi. Great presentation. Might be a two-part question.
Thank you.
So, in the first part of it, I can see the benefit from, say, Fitbit sends you an email, congratulations, etc. Second item, I remember a Harvard speech where it was people that had had heart attacks and heart surgery. They did a test where, to continue your treatment, one group, you take a pill. The second group, you need to do these exercises every day regularly, or you will die. That was the motivation. End result, the people that had to take the pill, only a pill, did horribly worse. So with Fitbit, don't you already have a predetermined market of people who buy the Fitbit by definition? And the second one, your marketplace is a variety of people and their motivations, and how do you determine that?
So your first question is about the
I understand.
market constraint?
With Fitbit, I think do you not already have sort of, people are motivated, they bought the Fitbit, they want to get healthy, they have goals, they fit into they've self-identified themselves.
Sure.
In the second group, they've self-identified with a health issue, but their motivational profiles may be completely different.
Gotcha, cool. So what we figured out, and this is part of the experience of building a developer tool, is you get to meet a lot of developers all the time. What we figured out for that first question is that the nice thing about all these sensors packed into the phone now is that the emotional dedication and the financial dedication you have to the behavior change is almost zero. Because downloading an app is now free, and many of the apps are getting as good as the expensive wearables you could go buy, the amount of commitment you need to have investing in that behavior change used to be $80 worth of commitment, because you'd have to go to Best Buy and get the fucking Fitbit. And now it's, okay, a 10-second little fluke, I guess it's a free app, and you go download some pedometer, it's gonna end up doing the same thing. By lowering that commitment barrier, you get a lot of people who don't yet identify with behavior change or trying to be healthy, who can just say like, hey, on a whim, sure, I'll give it a try. Have you ever watched how kids install apps? Like half of the reason the app industry is like freaking out about engagement and retention is it has to deal with teenagers. And they'll download anything for 15 minutes. And the whole idea here then for that second part is that if you get that commitment barrier low enough that anyone will just go try these things out, then what you need is an intelligent system that says, okay, you've signed in once, you've signed in twice, great, now I need to find some way to persuade you to keep doing that for 3 weeks. If you use some pieces of machine learning around unsupervised learning, you can pick apart really early on in a user's, what we call a user's lifespan. First few days, you can start slotting them predictably into, okay, this looks like it's gonna be a type 7 user. They've got low daily engagement, but they're gonna try it once every 4 days. So each time they're in the app, be really excited to see them again. And if you treat each of those users, depending on early on how they started using the app, you can start picking apart patterns in how to get people who have just downloaded it on a fluke to convert into, okay, they're gonna stay for 30, 60, 90 days. Does that kind of answer the 2 questions?
It does.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Also, if my answers are unsatisfactory, tell me. And I'll find a better way to explain it.
So my core question comes down to, at what point do these apps actually distance us from human contact with other people directly as a substitution? And I want to give a quick example as to where this comes from. Back in 1980, 4 of the major hospitals and the associated outpatient clinics in Brisbane, Australia, were dealing with the same issue: how do I get people with cardio issues walking more? And what they did was they set up groups, and they would set them up in gyms, and they had concentric circles, because it was not just a matter of walking more. They realized that they wanted the patients that they were encouraging to actually interact with each other. And so if you were really in a bad condition, you would walk around the small in a concentric circle. But if one of the people that you got to meet and like was starting to move out, that was your motivation. And it was that human interchange. Now, fast forward 25 years, all right, the issue was Herbalife just bought a company called iChange, which did the community aspect online of getting people to encourage each other. But what I'm hearing you say, and where my question comes from, are these apps substituting human interaction that can actually be more motivating than the app itself?
Some of them, yes. So you've asked me a very broad question about the entire app ecosystem. And as representative of all the apps, I'm going to answer your question on behalf of all software. You did point to a really pertinent problem. So for those who are familiar from public health and public health policy, things like the trans-theoretical model of behavior change suggests that behavior change, especially when you're trying to pick up or stop certain types of health behaviors, does not happen overnight, does not happen with only one component, does not happen with only one stakeholder. It happens at personal change levels, it happens at community family levels, it happens at infrastructural and society levels, which is kind of what you're getting at. So there are many facets to behavior change that you want to gear individually each of them to get the maximum amount of change out of a population. Some of these apps are going to, just by their nature of just interact with me, encourage users to try to tackle behavior change as a, hey, it's just me against the world kind of strategy. The ones who do it right are going to be the ones who respect the existing literature in public health and say, hey, a reinforcement mechanic is going to be great. What's going to be great is also using as that reinforcer, the little moment of joy, a little bit of social praise from a teammate or a stakeholder in my behavior change. So you can envision that while some of these apps aren't going to go that route, and that's going to be their folly, there are going to be other pieces of software that respect, hey, man, behavior change is about all of us together. This is about me wanting to get to that other circle with that person, and that's going to be motivation. Putting those in automated contexts doesn't need to rip out the humanity from it. It is nice. My father lives in Sydney. It is nice that I get to have a relationship with him through the net because of these types of technologies, and he gets to keep up on my life like this. I can't say that the technology itself is going to isolate or connect people. What I know is that it can encourage more connection than not, and the apps that are going to get it right are going to be the ones that are going to use behavior change and that kind of social connection and humanity together in a bootstrapped fashion. Those are going to make more of a difference than the apps that just say try it yourself. But as a whole, I couldn't tell you categorically either one on whether or not they encourage the isolation.
Next question's okay.
My name is Sophia Herrera. I'm a clinical psychologist by training, so thank you so much for your presentation.
You're very welcome. I'm sorry for any gross factual inaccuracies.
No. You talked about the responsibility of building apps. I know we live in a capitalist society, but I'm wondering if you ever anticipate having a regulatory body that looks at the ethics of how apps are built.
Yeah, I would love to see that, to be totally honest, because it is, I have an associate of mine, someone I grew up with, who's spent the past few years aggressively lobbying to make gambling legal from your smartphone. Gambling legal from your smartphone. $1 a pop, $5 a pop, $20 a pop. And I know that the back of the napkin ethics he tries to argue are things like, but man, like the Olympics, but dude, the education system and funding. Like, yeah, idiot, there's like a lot of other ways to get money that don't involve ruining humans. And I really, I'll take a hard stance on it. Okay, probably one of the less ethical ideas I've ever heard. I'm probably going to I'm sure this is going to come down and bite me in the ass in a decade or two. So I'll choose my language carefully for plausible deniability. There are going to be pieces of how software interacts with people that we're either going to want something like centralized regulation or auto-regulating third-party bodies. So for example, whether or not you can call a building LEED certified is not a government certification process. It is a third-party process that says you've met certain ethical standards for how the material's been sourced and the efficiency of your building, and we will only do business with people who have gone through this process. What is probably going to emerge in the app marketplace, because it is so freaking hard to regulate, and you cannot propose a way to regulate software that's going to be totally effective just by the nature of software and information transfer, is going to be that people are only going to want to download apps that have been stamped by some sort of third-party regulatory body that says, this uses persuasive technology, and it is doing it for probably a normatively good reason. In the same way that you now trust a website that has a little green lock in the corner, and that's not a centrally regulated thing, it's going to be systems like that, like VeriSign and like these companies thought that are doing third-party authentication, that are going to be able to trust stamp different apps, say, yes, they're changing your behavior, but most people lost 15 pounds, so it's probably okay. And you're going to be able to look to communities like that to say, this one says it's going to help me with my diet, but actually just made me click on ads more. So I'm thinking if there's going to be regulation, there should be, and it's going to happen that route as opposed to government regulation.
So that's the big brother aspect. This gentleman's got his Fitbit, he's running, so his insurance company gives him a good rate. He loses the Fitbit, forgets to tell his insurance company, his rates go up. How do we deal with stuff like that?
So I remember seeing this comic when I was a kid that had George Jetson flying his saucer to work, and he left his coffee mug on top. His tools change, people don't. I think you're asking me how do I change people, which is literally what I do. Not on the accident side. The nice thing is that as more and more of these tools kind of just start embedding in the phone, and the software for processing what's going on in our accelerometers is getting better and better, yada yada, technical improvement, you're probably going to have fewer third-party devices you have to keep with you, but even then the question still becomes then what happens if I lose my phone? I'd imagine a little bit of empathy from your employer. That's what I could hope for. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Harrington, and I'm a founder of a company called Team U that changes behaviors in the schools.
Sounds fascinating.
My question today, though, is one of the reasons that Watson left Harvard and went to advertising is because that's where the money is.
You got kicked out because you had an affair with a grad student.
But so you're making... Okay, got 2 for 1 there.
Sorry.
So,
I just learned this story yesterday. It's awesome.
So could you talk, and you've talked a lot about the strength of the ethical case
Yeah.
for using this, not in advertising, but in positive behavior change. Can you talk a little bit about the economic case? Really, if an investor were looking at your company, what are the strength of the economics taking the ethical case versus the other side?
So if you are a major porn company, you cannot get Google AdWords. There have been cases, so to put in perspective, porn is ridiculously lucrative. There's so much money in porn. But Google has decided it would be a brand destructive activity to do business with porn. Simply because there is too much money left on the table doing other things and selling other forms of advertising that might not raise too many other questions about morality or ethics or norms. So they took a stance and said, yeah, we understand we're leaving a buttload of capital on the table. Fine, fine. And they phrased it as a long-term brand building activity. So if you need to go down the ethical route or the quick monetization route, and brand is at stake because your norms are a really core part of your brand ethic, I'm going to come down on the side of you always leave the money on the table and go for the long-term investment in your brand, as opposed to the quick monetization route. Because Google could have taken the porn money, but then they'd be the world's largest purveyor of smut at scale, which would be problematic for their ability to say, no, no, we're really about the world's information and organizing it effectively. So I really would say that if it really boiled, if part of your brand norms are we're here doing good, stick to that, and there are always people who will pay you for value creation. It is a farce that we think that the last bastion of value creation on the net is just another place to show people cat videos. That's fucking dystopia. Build something useful and people will pay you for it. You don't have to put advertisements in it.
So I'm Andrew Jansen from Caltech, and the question I have is, what do you see this happening? What do you see happening with this in 10 years? I mean, everyone's going to have smartphones. We already do. We're going to have smart cars. We're going to have everything connected even more than we have it today. What do you see that being useful for?
So I've knocked off the first one. Queuing is probably my second. Optimal challenge is my third. Probably optimal information flow will be my fourth. Dopamine and the other companies that are starting to enter this persuasive computing area are going to, stop taking pictures, are going to start tackling these other tools in behavior design toolbox and then releasing them as products that developers can get to go use. So that's on the developer side. What's going to happen is we're going to see more platforms who are going to start being able to release tools that developers use to make persuasive software. And on the developer side, in the same way that today you're going to go with, you're a developer? On the hardware side, even for hardware, great. When you start solving a problem, you're going to go through your usual stack of, okay, I need this tool, I need this tool, I need this tool. You get them out, you line them up, you build the thing, you ship it. Software is no exception. You're just going to start seeing more tools that are precisely designed to manipulate just really small pieces of human behavior. This is a tool for just figuring out triggers properly. This is a tool for figuring out voicing on prompts properly. And they're going to start being very, very modular. So in the same way that for anyone who's developed in JavaScript, there's just been this huge trend for microservices and microlibraries for the past 10 years. Things like NPM and Grunt have been like really good for like these little micro library managements. You're just going to install little micro modules about changing human behavior. So you're going to install, okay, I need a reinforcement piece, and I need a positive praise piece, and I need an optimal challenge piece. For the consumer on the end side, what it's just going to look like is every piece of technology you're going to start interacting with is going to start yanking your brainstem a little harder and a little more accurately. If this goes well, and I hope it goes well for us, you're going to see a couple platforms emerge that are going to kind of be the marketplaces where these different apps are going to be competing for your attention as a user. So what I envision in 10 years is something like a real-time bidding marketplace for your brainstem. So you have 10 apps on your phone, and because they're all using the Dopamine API, we have a way to anneal your identity between the apps, so we know it's actually just you, as opposed to someone else, and it's you consistent between these 10 apps. And each of them, in a real-time bidding marketplace, mostly governed by AIs, are going to be using microtransactions, bidding for who gets to reinforce you today. Maybe it's the diet app, maybe it's the pedometer, maybe it's the game you're playing. Because if they all did it at the same time, it would be a wash. You actually wouldn't see any behavior change in any of them. You desensitize to the entire experience, and you become predictive. So all these things that really want you just to use their little piece are actually going to start competing for who gets to be your little high five today. So from the economic side, that means there's a massive amount of money here on the line in real time for all of these apps that are going to compete for your attention. Because you guys know, like, how many people like have looked at their notification screen and seen 5,000 things that want to talk to them? It's like, oh, fuck this, not right now. Every single one of you, you have a smartphone. Stop lying. You've all been overwhelmed by your smartphone at times, trying to reach for your attention. That's just how it works now, because there's no sort of regulation for this. There's no sort of central marketplace saying who gets to talk to you right now. Everybody gets to talk to you all the time. It's going to become completely bedlam, unless there's some sort of system that emerges for who gets to compete to be that thing that you attend to. So I think in the 10-year, we're going to see more platforms emerging that change human behavior at scale like this. We're going to see the beginning of a real-time bidding marketplace for who gets to be that thing that you pay attention to. And as an end user, the tools that you use are going to become stickier and stickier and stickier. Semi-adequate answer? Awesome.
One last question.
Okay.
Also, if this is the last question, anyone just come harangue me afterwards. I promise I don't bite.
Jeff Scounfield Advantage. I'm part of the Society of Motion Picture Intelligence Engineers, and
Cool.
one of the things that we do is we regulate. We're right now in regulating the standards for metadata for smart devices and televisions
Awesome.
and stuff like that.
Cool.
But we're seeing a lot of data. The analytics and data coming back from users from the phones and from iPads and stuff like that is intense. And the one big challenge we're doing is like you said, responsibly managing that data. And so I want to find out because I see on the entertainment industry, but on the non-entertainment industry, what is being done to, well, you said there's nobody managing, no central board managing that responsible thing.
No, and for end consumers, that's a bit of a problem. If you're part of a protected group, it's a little better. So if you're a child or a student, you're protected by something called FERPA, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, which says that your grades are sensitive and must be treated with certain types of encryption. And if you're a patient in a system, you're subject to HIPAA, the Health Information Patient Privacy Act. It says any of your patient data and anything about you or your health, or what you do with your doctors, that could ever be traced back to you, must be stored in this very particular sort of anonymized, scrubbed, secured way. So this is fantastic. If you find yourself very young or sick, your data is safe. But what about the rest of us? Every other able-bodied adult or teenager or non-student, fine, what happens? There aren't really any strong, I don't even mean cryptographically strong, but like emotionally valent pushes that any developers are facing to be really sensitive with how they handle people's data. We do have the fortunate thing that apps that like leaking your data don't last very long because the pitchforks are quite pointy and you will find out very fast there's been a data leak. So think about any times that someone's told you, oh, such and such passwords got compromised, or data got leaked, or credit card numbers got leaked. The pitchforks come out pretty quick. So luckily, the companies that don't take security seriously don't last very long. And as far as kind of centralized ways that people can be sensible about storing that data, there are some cool pushes going on for how we can be responsible about centralizing and storing certain parts of behavior data that maybe aren't quite health but aren't quite TV metadata. So one of these is the Human API, which is a platform for storing behavioral data and health data in a way that's very secure and anonymized and very well scrubbed. So what we hopefully start seeing is more of these competitors that say, listen, doing data storage is a headache, getting it right is a headache, you're an app developer, you just want to make a great tool, let us handle this piece for you about sanely and safely storing all of this, and we'll charge you $100 a month for this many users, but you don't have to sweat about regulation, you don't have to sweat about everything being secure. I think that's the direction it's going to go. So we'll see more of these platforms that take the burden away from developers of doing the security and the encryption and the morass and mostly the legal overhead for all of this, and make it a more plug-and-play solution. So my hope is that it goes that direction.
By the way,
Yeah.
one of the reasons Google dropped Quorum was because that companies, investing companies like Morgan Stanley, who don't invest in evil stocks, gave them a lower devaluation until they pulled. So it wasn't just altruistic. It was.
I never thought it was altruistic. I always just thought it was a brand building activity. But this does.
They were devalued until they pulled that.
That's fascinating. Thank you.
Tobacco, they pulled a lot of alcohol. Alcohol is hard time. Alcohol gets a little bit of pass, but tobacco and corn don't get passed.
Oh, good for them. There's once again like the gut check. Would I build this thing such that I prefer my children to live in it? Like, yeah, that one's not bad. Cool. Well, thank you for that. I learned something too today. So, okay, I think they're gonna put me back in my box now. Ramsay, come say hi. If you're a developer, go try out dopamine.com. Otherwise, enjoy your morning. Have a really dope weekend, and thank you guys for your time.